is the Catch Wrestling Alliance, and we keep real wrestling alive here. So we're also live on YouTube and Twitch, and I want to share with you more advice from the life work of Farmer Burns. I think this chapter is really good, and so basically the chapter is called "The Outdoor Man's Mental Culture," right? But the title of this video is, basically the like. Actually, I forgot what I titled it. But anyway, basically like the advantage, right, that you can get from the farmer's advantage, right? So basically, what happened in this chapter is that he, let's get to it because it's a short chapter, but a lot happens in this chapter, and I think you'll like it. Okay, so the whole thing starts off where he's talking about the outdoor man, and let's go ahead and get to it. So he quotes an article. So there was an article that was written actually about him. It says the following article, which appeared in the Des Moines Homestead under the date of July 1st, 1907, shows that a well-disposed mental attitude is best fitted to win out in all cases. Right, so it kind of goes back to what he was talking about. So even in the first chapter of his book, Farmer Burns talks about like having like an optimistic mindset. So whatever, like regardless of whatever adversity you face, having that whole optimistic mindset is going to help you out a lot. At least that is Farmer Burns' point of view. You can agree with it or not, but I'm just letting you know what he thinks and what's written in his book, right? So again, this is already chapter 6, and again, right at the beginning, the whole optimist mindset comes back into play. So it's important to him, right? If it gets repeated in his book, then you know that it's really important to him. Okay, so continuing, basically now they just put an article into the book, and so the article is called "The Farmer's Advantage Favoring Longevity." Okay, so it says a French newspaper has been instructing its readers how to live to a good old age, drawing its conclusion from the lives and writings of famous men. For instance, Moltke said that the secret of his health lay in great moderation in all things. Victor Hugo had a tablet on the wall of his house with the following inscription: rising at 6, dining at 10, supping at 6, retiring at 10, makes the life of a man 10 times 10. Chevreul, the famous chemist who lived to be 103 years old, considered a happy disposition to be an important factor contributing to his long life. Sir Benjamin Ward Richardson declares that those who wish to reach a century must neither smoke nor drink. They should eat sparingly of meat, work as little as possible by artificial light, trouble themselves little about making a fortune, and never allow ambition to rule their lives. By all these signs, the farmer, meaning Farmer Burns, should live to a ripe old age. He practices Moltke's moderation, goes Victor Hugo one better by rising at 5 and retiring at 9. He has learned through the years of experience to cultivate a happy disposition, that it's worse than useless to trouble himself about making a fortune, for nature, urged a little by scientific knowledge, goes serenely on her way, duplicating miracles of the past, so that whether it rains or drought follows, the unfailing goodness of God makes the fields to bear harvest, that his people may be fed. All right, so he sets it up by, they talk about French article, and they cite some really famous people who lived a long time, or even who have experience, or like experts talking about how to live to 100. And they talk about how Farmer Farmer Burns kind of is the epitome of all these things, and um, so that's the beginning, right? But there's other things that kind of go on that I'd kind of like to share with you because it's not just that. So then Farmer Burns kind of goes into the mindset later. So let's kind of skip to that. Okay, so it just they kind of describe why Farmer Burns is special. So I might as well show you that. Um, so he's saying he's been a star on the map for a number of years. Um, that being asked, the secret of his marvelous physique, which has maintained to an age when most professional athletes have long since become frail, stale, and worn out, he explained that he drank neither tea, coffee, nor intoxicating liquor, used no tobacco in any form, and never swore. It is easy to see why this famous athlete does not inject into his system any stimulant to tear down and destroy his tissues after momentary exhilaration is ended. But it is not so easy to see why he places uh, abstention up first when a struggle comes. Okay, so they're going to go into this different uh, they're going to go into the mindset aspect right now. Okay, so he says, when a man says, and it's kind of funny because they censor this part, but they put the two letters and then a line. So, but what it means is when a man says, damn it, it's a sure sign that he is up against it and that he can't win. It's when the other wrestler is saying, damn it, that I roll him over on his shoulders, right? So, back in his time, that was much more of an offensive thing to say or to hear. But basically, yeah, it's like when they're using that term, but basically just to mean that when you hear someone already kind of resigning themselves, or when they make some exclamation showing that they are frustrated, then that's when you know you have the advantage, right? So in this case, they're saying, "Damn it," right? So that's when the farmer knows that he's going to win, and he's able to pin them. Right? Thereafter, all lies the real secret of success of the wrestler who is the marvel of the athletic world. He does not know what failure is. To curse his luck would be to admit a possibility of failure, which the very thought would bring about. Right. So if you're already thinking that if you're frustrated, you're in a tough match, you're in a tough situation, and then you already say like, "Damn it!" And so in this case, "Damn it," right? Then you already are kind of, at least in Farmer Burns' point of view, you're already admitting defeat. You're already giving up. You're mentally, so then you can be overtaken at that time, right? Let me see if it. Yeah, so the farmer who succeeds is the farmer who follows the advice of Farmer Burns, right? Um, he rises in the morning and looking out over the fields which he had intended to work that day, finds the rain falling on them. The impulse to say, damn it, may be strong, but to do so is to admit the possibility of failure. Right? The man who refrains from saying it is the man who, like Farmer Burns, rolls the other fellow over on his shoulders and takes the fall, going out to do the 1,001 chores which are invariably left for the rainy day, or laying plans which the coming of the sun brings into fruition. There are problems and difficulties in everyday farming life which must be wrestled and thrown. Just as Farmer Burns wrestles opponents to the mat, his secret of success and strong physique may be followed with as good results to the farmer as to the wrestler. Right. So again, they briefly mention the other things, like eating fruits and vegetables and very little animal products, and waking up early and all that, but they kind of brush by that. That's all, like just a couple sentences. But then they go on for paragraphs talking about the mindset. So we have to admit that is truly important. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a book called Blue Zones, and basically it was studies of places in the world where populations regularly lived to 100 years old in a healthful way, right? So you have healthy, they're called centenarians. So there are certain pockets around the world where we have a lot of healthy centenarians, and where it's just common for people to produce centenarians, right? So uh, there's these researchers compiled the commonalities of these people, and so what they find is the mentality is the strongest indicator. It's one of the strongest. I can't always. It's not always good to speak in absolutes, but it's one of the strongest indicators for someone to live to 100 healthfully, right? So right now in the United States, our life expectancy is decreasing, but something that is increasing is the amount of time someone lives disabled, right? So say if people are living longer overall, because of drugs and stuff keeping people alive, they are living longer disabled, right? So they're living longer, potentially in chronic pain, or basically not able to live their life to the fullest. And that's not the way human beings are meant to live, right? So we can live healthfully to 100 or even beyond. And so we have these different populations around the world that have been doing so forever, right? And not only forever, but for the longest time, right? So a lot of people talk, or a lot of people think of Okinawa as being one. It's true, it is one of these blue zones, um, but it's not the longest lived people. And some people might be shocked or surprised to hear that the longest lived people on Earth actually live here in California. And of course, it's not all. They're not all by the beach or anything, but they're actually kind of inland from Los Angeles. They live in basically it's the 7 Day Adventists, and so they live maybe like an hour drive east from Los Angeles. So they're the ones that, again, yeah, they are. Because in the early books of the Bible, it's the first book of the Bible, they talk about in the Garden of Eden, God wants man and woman, or like Adam and Eve, to be eating fruits and vegetables, and so the 7 Day Adventists, they try to be vegetarian. But so they try to implement a lot of the things that like Farmer Burns are talking about here. But so that being said, that's all fine and good. But then also the mentality thing is another thing, that like another commonality between all these groups in different blue zones, right? So the mentality is that, so say like in Western culture, in many of our countries, a lot of people believe that age 40, they call it like going over the hill, right? So you're beyond, like you were great in your 20s, and 30s you start kind of feeling a little different, and then by 40, oh man, it's all downhill from there. That like these societies where they regularly live much longer, they don't believe that. They don't buy that. And when you don't buy that, then your body follows, right? So what the research has shown is that, like say, if you believe, oh, I'm so old and I'm all decrepit now, then your immune system won't work optimally. Yeah, you won't heal as efficiently as before. Um, so yeah, your mind believes a lot of what you think, right? So um, I would say, yeah, because like the way you perceive your world really affects even how hormones are utilized, or if there's like excessive amounts of stress hormone that's circulating in your body, right? So the way you perceive your world is really affects the internal reality, right? So if you're perceiving a lot of chaos, which there could be that right? But say like how Farmer Burns is talking about having an optimistic outlook, right? So if you're trying to find the silver lining and everything, right? How in the chapter they talk about like if you live on a farm, then there's tons of things you have to do, but if you wake up in the morning, you planned all these things, and it's raining, if like how Farmer Burns says, if you just look outside and say, "Damn it, I can't do it," or "I can't whatever," and you're upset about it, then that's going to affect you negatively, right? So it's all about not thinking that way, and that then your body follows, right? So then we have research showing that um, your your body does follow in all kinds of ways, right? So hormonally, your immune system function, et cetera, right? So I think that's why in this chapter they kind of briefly mention like you're outside or drinking water and eating healthfully, you're going to sleep early and this and that. It is not as big of a part of the chapter than the mindset thing, right? All right, so there's another little passage that I want to read from it, which I thought was pretty cool. All right, so it says that. So that if you are one whose lot is cast in the great out of doors, remember that you have every advantage as long as you keep your eye trained on the brighter side of life. Right, so he's talking about like, oh, maybe the person who grew up on the farm has an advantage, like say with mindset over the person who grew up in the city. And they also talk about like they kind of mentioned the like electric light and all that. So like not being so helpful as like being outside in the sun. So um, so he kind of says like, oh, the farmer, or at least the person who's out of doors, can have an advantage, right? But just know that it's not like this is a definite cure all, or the results are the same for everybody. But Farmer Burns again recognizes the potential benefits of like the out of doors lifestyle or the farmer lifestyle, but again, he talks about like the mindset being there because yeah, like he says, like even a farmer can have all these things planned, and then when it rains, then he can resign himself and think negatively. But the whole goal is to not think negatively, have that optimistic mindset, right? And then you can always turn something that seems negative or that appears negative, and then you can make it into a positive. And so then he talks about life, but then also talks about matches, right? So if you're in a tough match, and he has another quote later, and I've shared it on our social media, where it talks about it's like you should not even think for 1 second that you can lose. And he says you should not even believe it until you've lost the match that you can lose, right? And he kind of says a little bit more poetically, where it's like do not even believe until both of your shoulders are pinned down and the referee calls the match that you can lose, right? So that's why so like by saying like damn it, right, then that already creates that little fracture in your brain, in your mindset, and that can allow negativity to creep in, or it can allow your opponent, right, to then roll you over and put you back on your shoulders. Or if you're kind of nearing if your back is kind of, you have what they call like back exposure, right? It's almost there, or you're kind of being tilted to get both shoulders onto the mat. If you're even if that moment, if you're thinking that you can lose, then it's going to seep in, and your partner or your opponent will have a better chance of winning, at least winning the mental game. And if they win the mental game, right, you've lost a lot. You're probably going to lose, and you probably like your health bar will go down a lot, right? Even though you're still physically strong. All right, so I thought that chapter was pretty cool. Even though it's kind of short, but I think it had a lot of cool little tidbits in there. Um, actually, let me go ahead and read that last sentence again. Right. So, so that if you are one whose lot is cast in the great out of doors, remember that you have every advantage as long as you keep your eye trained on the brighter side of life. Optimism, right? So it doesn't mean that you deny reality, right? If something's bad, but if you're able to kind of uh, think on like what is the silver lining there, then you can probably make lemonade, right, out of lemons. All right, so let me get to Ellie, Ellie the game hunter. Uh, a growth mindset is a key necessity to almost every part of life. Interesting to hear it from Farmer Burns' perspective. Yeah, I totally agree. Also, the thing about that is that like this is back like this book, I guess was copyrighted or whatever back in 1911, or at least published in 1911. So at this time. Um, Farmer, I mean, Frank Gotch was still alive, and then also too, Farmer Burns was born like around the Civil War, so it's like it's not like it was just like a happy time in in U.S. history, right? So and it's granted, it's like U.S. history has very few like happy times where there wasn't war or there wasn't labor battles, right, or class warfare, or actual warfare in between Civil War or like even earlier, where it's like we're fighting even against the British, and then and so anyway, there's like he was even born in a time where it wasn't necessarily like all peaceful, but he still talks about optimism, right? So that's um, that's one of the things that he really values. So I want to keep sharing that with you guys, right? Because I thought it was pretty cool because of that time period, right? Because also too, in the 20s, we're pretty soon it's going to start going into the 1920s, and then that a lot of people are like call that the Roaring Twenties, right? Because we had the upper class people, basically hoarding money, right? And then we had a lot of lower class people. We had a lot of segregation. We had a lot of things going on that isn't necessarily positive or egalitarian, or like people weren't really helping out others, and also we had a lot of labor problems where it's like people were trying to fight for labor rights that today we take for granted, right? So people were actually fighting and literally getting beat up and um, by their employers and whatnot. And so it wasn't until decades later that some of the stuff was made better or resolved, right? So it wasn't until like, the New Deal and all that. So it wasn't like the best of times, right? But Farmer Burns wants you to find the good aspects, even if it's not the best of times. All right, Ellie. Also cool to hear him talk about being vegan, right? And that would be cool if he was vegan, right? He wasn't, but some of his wrestlers were. One in particular was Henry Collin, so or Colin. I think it's Kollon, so I think it's pronounced Colin. And he was also, and which is interesting, um, he was a Jewish person and also a vegan, right? So he'd only eaten fruits and vegetables, um, but the thing, so we're talking about that time period um, when Henry was competing. They also talked about how even though he was like 40 and whatever, he was still beating all the young wrestlers that were coming up. And the funny thing is, like, the reason why we know he's Jewish is because in the article they mention it, right? And they try to mention it in a weird way. They say he's from the house of David, right? So it's like, why do you even have to bring that up? It's like nowadays it might not even be mentioned in a sports article. Um, what they would talk about nowadays is like, oh, how is this older guy, still beating all the young guys? But anyway, but then they mention, they interview him, and he talks about, yeah, I only eat fruits and vegetables, and work out all the time and whatnot. So, and again, he was one of Farmer Burns' wrestlers, and then he has the lineage to then. He was one of the guys who taught Billy Wicks, who then is more of our contemporary. He passed away recently, but then he also taught John Strickland, who is like the current lineage holder of that Farmer Burns lineage. Right. All right, Taquero Man 91. What submissions was Farmer Burns known for? He was known for pinning people. But yeah, he knew all the different types of submissions. But yeah, like you can hear him talk about it, and he's really a wrestler, right? So he mentions pinning all the time, pinning people, right? He also talks about the wrestler needs to study the different submission holds, but a lot of times, even at this time, and I believe that it still should be the thought, even of people who call themselves catch wrestlers today, it still should be the thought that these like toe holds and stuff are used or should be used to roll someone over onto their back, right? So you're still going for that pin. So a lot of times the toe hold was used to get control of the leg, and you give someone so much pain that in order to relieve that pain by the twisting of their ankle, that they have to flip over onto their back, right? So they're face up and they're pinning themselves, right? So he knew the face locks and all that stuff, but again, at this time, people are really thinking about putting people on their back, right? And Hackenschmidt and all these people who they talk about Gotch and Frank Gotch and his toe holds and all that. Yeah, the toe hold position puts a lot of pain on the ankle, but the thing is, Frank, he didn't necessarily ever break someone's ankle or anything like that. People would submit or throw themselves onto their back to give up because of the discomfort, right? So he knew all that. He knew all the holds. He knew the different bar arms and basically like hammer locks and all that. But a lot of that is controlling the way the person, like the way your opponent will move, right? So yeah, go ahead and keep asking questions. So, but I would say that you really, especially if you want to call yourself a catch wrestler, wrestling is in the name, right? So you want to be thinking about putting someone on their back. So even if you're competing in no gi, maybe even if you're competing in some gi stuff or whatever, but I would say you still want to kind of have that mindset. I think judo, some of the judo styles still kind of have that mindset where they'll still have like a pin. They have their own kind of pin. And so they realize that the value of keeping someone on their back, and you just the advantage that you have, right? So if you're the person who's on your back, you're face up, not only do you have to fight against the person's weight and their force, you also have to fight against gravity. So you're just benching, you're benching people. So like even though there's a lot of different techniques or submissions from the bottom, you got to really practice them a lot, and you got to be really proficient in order to be able to get them, right? Especially get them against someone like really high level and stuff like that. Not against your little brother in the backyard or whatever, right? So you basically in a match you want to take every advantage possible, right? And so even in some of Farmer Burns' other lessons, he talks about, and I think this is another good point to answer your question with regards to submissions. One of the things that Farmer Burns talks about is making someone bear your own weight, right? So so the mindset is different then as opposed to nowadays, because again, you can see the influence of jujitsu And you do just even amateur wrestling competitions, right? The matches are so short that um, people are used to, like, you gotta blast double, you gotta shoot, you gotta shoot real quick, or you gotta pull your guard real fast, and um, so you gotta do things within just a few minutes. Sometimes with a 3 minute round or a 3 minute match, right? Or sometimes only 5 minutes or 7 minutes, right? So that wasn't the case in Farmer Burns' time. So he was used to basically unlimited time, and so what he mentions is about making the other person bear your weight, so pushing their head down. You're not thinking about pinning them quickly, right? You're thinking about wearing them down, tiring them out, so that you can roll them over onto their back. You can use some submission holds, right, to make it uncomfortable, so it's easier for you to roll them onto their back to pin them, right? If they tap out, or if they quit, great, right? But the thing is like, yeah, he mentions, like pushing their head down. So they're trying to resist you. So he's like, they're basically doing reps, right? So if you keep pushing them down, they keep lifting their head up, push it down again, up again. He's like, how many times can you do that in one day? It's like lifting weights. And so you can only lift a weight, so many times before your muscles fatigue and you can no longer do it, right? So he says that's one of the keys, right? So that you can consider that being one of the submissions, right? Really just wearing out your opponent, right? And so then the more you train or wrestle in that way, then the more you can get used to it, the longer you can last, the better stamina you have. But it can translate to, like, in nogi in particular. I mean, even recently, Gordon Ryan, like a really famous jujitsu practitioner that everyone loves to hate, right? Like, he was calling for 30-minute matches, 30-minute nonstop submission only matches, right? I think his last match that he had, I think that was a 30-minute time limit, and I totally agree. I could go for it, because our matches in the Catch Wrestling Alliance competitions, they are 20 minutes, right? So if he's going for 30 minutes, and if you guys all, are cool with that, I'm cool with a 30-minute match also, right? So, and I believe, like, one of the last big time real catch wrestling matches are the Earl Caddock versus Joe Stecker at Madison Square Garden. That was one fall, right? So it wasn't best of three or anything like that. That was like whoever won that first fall was the winner. I believe that took over an hour, right? And again, wearing people down. You can see that on YouTube. You can find that. And you can see basically it's like Joe, jumping on Earl's back, and he's in referee or turtle position, and just trying to dig his shins into his thighs, and they're kind of going back and forth, just trying to make one guy ride, basically make one guy bear the other person's weight. And then that's kind of what happens. They're not just like kind of blast in there and then trying to get some submission, right? That's not the mindset, and that's not the way it was. So, but nowadays, I think because of the shorter time limits in both amateur wrestling and jiu-jitsu, then you're going to get the average person thinking like, oh, you need, and also to even pro wrestling, the whole aspect where it's like some big, strong guys, he's going to come in and just pick someone up and slam them and this and that. And it's like, yeah, that's not the way they were thinking. That's not the way they were approaching a match where there was no time limit, right? You want to go in and, make that person, ride that person. You want to ride that person, push their head down into the mat, just make them lift, do reps, right, of your body weight. And hopefully you can get them to tire out, right? Yeah, so go ahead and keep asking questions if you guys have any. Thank you for watching. It's kind of an unusual time, anyway. So, but I wanted to kind of share this chapter with you guys because I thought it was pretty cool. So Takeru Man 91, which catch wrestlers were known for wrist locks? Can wrist locks be used for pins? Yes, right? So that was one of the holds. That was a catch wrestling hold that, again, you can often use. So like if someone grabs you from behind, they get around behind you, you can counter them with that double wrist lock. So you get that double wrist lock position. You can throw them over. You can get them onto their back. So with regards to the double wrist lock, yeah, that's a big time hold, and that carried over to pro wrestling because that one you can make a big show, right? So it's like you can do like these big flips and all that, and still kind of hang on to the hold, and so you can make a big spectacle of it. Okay, Takeru Man, do you recommend any catch wrestling solo drills? Yeah. Join our Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy, and then we have a bunch of things. Also, too, if you check back in some of our earliest live streams for quarantine, I think there was a couple ones that I did where I even used a dummy or without dummy. So maybe check back on those. Ellie, the game hunter. Imagine how many potatoes and how much rice he ate back then. I find it interesting how many people lived vegan lifestyles back then. Yes, there's a good book if you want to hear about like these really famous people that you might not have known about. Um, who were like vegetarians and stuff. So a lot of times people were only vegetarian, so they might have still had some milk or whatever, or cheese. Um, but yeah, there were a lot of famous writers, and um, yeah, like the woman who wrote Frankenstein. Frankenstein is actually turns out it was actually a book to talk about how plant-based diet is actually better, but how people view because Frankenstein's monster was a plant eater, right? So, um, anyway, so the author Mary Shelley and her husband, they were all plant eaters. Yeah, so there was a lot more than you think. A lot more plant eaters. You guys are asking a lot of questions. All right, okay. Back to Takeru Man. Are there any upcoming catch wrestlers transitioning into MMA? Not sure. Not sure. Because right now we're kind of focusing on seeing if we can get back to doing events, especially here in LA. We've got a lot of cool venues and stuff like that. So we'll try to get back to it. Any good catch? Oh yeah, so Ed got to that question. Any submissions you'd recommend for a lanky person? Doing your legs stuff. So doing scissors, crooked head scissors. Yeah, I think we did one where it's like the breakdown where there was a head scissors that Penn State wrestler Jason Nolf did right against a double leg takedown attempt. He got head scissors and he spun the guy around and was able to get a pin. So we did a video on that. So check out. I think it's in a playlist that we have. It's like amateur to catch. Right, I think that's the playlist where it mentions amateur wrestling. It'll be in that playlist. Any well-established female catch wrestlers that we should check out? We'll see. Hopefully, hopefully the woman I'm working with in China can. She's doing really well in MMA. She's ranked number one in China right now for MMA in the lightest weight division for women. She won 4 matches in a row in this pro tournament. So she's trying real hard. She loves wrestling. Let's see. Ellie. Takeru Man is asking all the questions I never thought to ask. Takeru Man, any current Japanese catch wrestlers that you recommend to check out? No. I think a lot of them are doing like judo and stuff, and mixing some of the pro wrestling stuff. So there wouldn't be like a pure catch wrestler. Yeah, so Ellie again says like he doesn't believe that Kana would consider herself, so a Japanese wrestler wouldn't consider herself a catch wrestler. It's true. Did I release a podcast? Yes. So what happens is when I do the live stream, then I the next day I release it as a podcast. So you can find that on Apple and Google Podcasts and all that stuff. Okay, so Ellie, quick plug. I highly recommend anyone to sign up for the Catch Wrestling Academy. Lots of techniques to look at and study. One of the few places where I found that gives you an essential foundation. Thank you very much. Yes, I agree, and I think that's why it's like you can't progress beyond like what the foundational things that I basically I planned it out where you have these foundational course. So basically, two main foundational classes, like foundations of stand-up stuff, foundations of the mat wrestling, so the groundwork, and then I put a few extra things about like conditioning, and then also from my friend on the East Coast, John Strickland, who has we talk about the lineage, the Farmer Burns lineage. I'm also certified under John as well. So we have all that as the foundation for our Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy. And then once you demonstrate your proficiency in those two foundational courses, then you get access to more and more. And so you get access to more advanced technique stuff, but then also like tips on wrestling better, but then also even maybe coaching tips as well. So that's all other courses that you'll get included into your package once you pass the foundational things. And so thank you, Ellie. I really appreciate that. Robert Hoggle. Any catch wrestling schools in Northern California? I don't know, Robert. You should start it. It should be you, bro. What is the name of the female Chinese catch wrestler that you're referring to? She's an MMA fighter, but she loves catch wrestling, and so I've gone to China. We've met a couple times in China, and then we trained together also in Singapore. Her name is Shiming, so Shiming. Shiming. Taquero Man, who are some of your top pupils? I think people who've been doing it the longest with me. I think you see Chris Morales. He's competed several times, and he won the heavyweight world championship in Iowa. And then so he's still training really hard, and he's much better than even in those videos. And then we also have, and actually I think what I'm going to do, because I switched everything over to a new website, so I'm going to start adding all the people who have like basically, we're having kind of levels of training. So people who are doing the Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy will have levels, and so then even though catch wrestling in general doesn't have any belts or anything, so we'll still kind of have like a ranking for you guys. And so then I'll put people like say like Chris Morales, and also I would say Manuel Salazar. You'll see Manuel in a lot of our technique videos. He's also a judo black belt. Also, he's a national black belt judo champion. He'll be up there as well. We also have a few women who've been training serious. Besides Shiming, we have a few women here in LA that have been training, but they are still kind of beginners. So we'll let you know about them later. But yeah, they're still cooking. Right? They still have to learn a lot of the foundational stuff in order to not get destroyed in a match. What workouts do you recommend for injury prevention? Compound weight training. So yeah, any of the like pushing. So you're not doing like bicep curl or tricep. Is it pushing, pulling, pushing up, or pulling down? That really helps to stabilize your shoulders. Same thing, squats also really help. Lunges, yoga, all those types of things really help, and stretching afterwards, after you're done. All right. How did you get started with catch wrestling? Taquero Man asks. So I got, because my foundation was in Chinese kickboxing, so Sanda, and so that has a lot of wrestling aspects, a lot of takedowns, and also Chinese wrestling. So the Chinese jacket wrestling, you might see, where it also has the takedowns. So it has this, all of it has a wrestling approach, so the top down approach. And so I wanted to complement that with some more like mat wrestling. And, jujitsu was already popular. So I tried that, but it didn't quite fit my way of thinking, right? So just researching. So, also amateur wrestling didn't quite do it for me as well. So, because I also wanted the whole submission aspect as well. And then that naturally led me to catch wrestling. And I've been doing that for over 10 years now. Oh, and that answers your following question, Takaram. Yeah, over 10 years. Yeah, crazy how time flies. But that consistently, so it wasn't like going back to it and leaving it. It's just, I was training, and I went to Wigan, trained privately with Billy Robinson. Just, went hardcore, also training with John Strickland, the American lineage, and that's the other thing that you can kind of, once you know, since I had a lot of experience with, even competing in Wigan, beating, representing Wigan and then beating other people from other countries and stuff in catch wrestling competition. Then when you see what, say like Billy Wicks and John Strickland teach, you can see the core is the same. So even though they were like separated by 100 years, it's almost exactly the same. There's just a little bit of a stylistic difference, but it's quite remarkable. Like a lot of the main details are just exactly the same. So it's like, they talk about like archaeologists, like, they find a pyramid in Indonesia and it's exactly the same dimensions as the pyramid in Mexico, or, something like that, where it's like different, or, but like remarkably similar. So you can tell that that lineage traces back to the same origin. I don't know about the pyramid. Yeah, just giving just an example, right? But yes, but I think you know what I mean. At least I hope you know what I mean. All right. Okay. So actually, I need to leave. So. Because we're going to start working on a project, and hopefully we can put a video out about that coming up that I think you guys might like. So I don't want to say too much about it, but hopefully it should be out soon, because a lot of you guys like judo, so it's actually going to be judo oriented. So we're going to do some kind of collaboration that I think you guys might like. So we need to work on that starting in a few minutes. So I have to take off. But thank you for watching, and thank you for listening if you're listening to the podcast. So this will be available tomorrow on podcast version. But yeah, so we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, wherever you're most comfortable, where it's most convenient for you to listen. I appreciate it. So see you next week, and feel free to continue asking questions or commenting. Let us know if you have any other questions. What else you'd like to know, right? All right. So Patrick, do you have any challenges trying to convince people about the effectiveness of catch wrestling? Of course, jiu-jitsu is super popular nowadays. So you get a lot of like zealots who they're ride or die for jiu-jitsu. All right, Ellie. Thanks for the class. Yep. Thank you for watching. Okay, guys. All right. So we'll see you next time.